Hello, welcome to the Wool Winder podcast. My name is Frances and this is my regular podcast where I talk to you about my knitting and a little bit about Hugo the dog here, our walks and some bits about my life. So I've got lots of cast-ons to tell you about today. I've got some works in progress, but let's start off by talking to you about my finished item here, which is the Waterlands sweater, which I finished a few weeks ago, maybe a week ago or so. I had nearly finished it and I had finished it, cast off, literally had a few inches of yarn left. I really played yarn chicken on this one. I'm not quite sure what happened when I bought this yarn, but I seemed to be a ball less than I thought I was. So I don't know if I lost a ball or I don't know what happened. Anyway, tried it on and I decided actually it was a bit shorter than I would like. So I undid it and I took it back, took out the rib, and Hugo has seen something going on. There's a dog out there, that's what it is. And I undid the rib, took it back, I added another 3 centimetres maybe of stocking stitch, and then I redid the rib. However, in the pattern you've got the lovely twisted rib around here, and I'd done the twisted rib on the sleeves, but there was a broken rib along the bottom. In fact, I think that should have been what was on the sleeves as well. And I did the broken rib, but actually I much preferred the twisted rib. It looked really nice in this yarn, and so I put the twisted rib on at the end, on at the bottom as well. So I'll put a photo up here of me wearing it. Really pleased with how it's come out with. It's a lovely colour. I mean, that was one of the things that really sold me about this. These yarns are from Birlinn yarns and they're from Hebridean sheep, and I picked it up at the Glasgow School of Yarn festival that I went to last October. And you can see the colours are just there behind me. Let's go that way. And the colours were beautiful, and there were lots of beautiful colours. The yarn is quite tweedy, slightly rustic, not as soft as, for example, superwash merino type thing, but I wore this over the weekend and it doesn't feel prickly. I think, as I say, it does feel maybe perhaps slightly rougher than a merino would, but it's very, very wearable, and I'm really pleased with it. And as I say, I love the yarns as well. Yes, I did, didn't I? Yes. So yeah, really, really pleased with this. It's an interesting pattern because the yoke has got some garter stitch bits going on in here. You know, generally though the yokes are just stocking stitch, aren't they? You know, so and that gives it more texture to it, and that makes it really interesting. What I did notice when I've been holding up the jumper before, when I've been talking on my videos, is I could actually see that there was something wrong. I think it was on that side, wasn't it? Anyway, essentially what I'd done, so I'd done a stitch or two in the wrong colour, and of course when you're then looking at it as a piece, it was showing. So all I did was I went over it using some duplicate stitch with the correct colour, and I think it looks perfect. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I don't think that you can see that. So I'm really pleased with that. There was a little bit on the back that I had to do as well. So, but that worked beautifully. So, very, very pleased with this. Feels lovely to warm. I've made it slightly longer than I have made some of my other jumpers, just maybe that much, just because I know that it's going to be a jumper that I'm going to wear only with jeans. I'm not going to wear it with a skirt. Therefore, I like those jumpers to be a little bit longer, and I really like the length. Actually, it's really comfortable and great for just sort of wearing at weekends and going out walking and so forth. So it's ideal. So yeah, brilliant. Love this, and I can see I'm going to get loads of wear out of this. So this has been brilliant. Okay, how are you doing? This is really interesting. What do you think? Yeah. You're quite happy there, aren't you? But I don't know how I'm going to pick up my next lot of stuff to show when I'm holding you. Are you enjoying looking out the window? Yeah, okay, right. My next project to talk to you about it's actually a series of projects on the same pattern, and it's the Traveller Cowl. And you may remember me talking about knitting this time last year, I think it would have been, or roughly around that sort of time. And this is the Traveller Cowl, and I will, what shall I do? me see if we can get a photo of it in it. Are you all right there, Hugo? Yeah. So this goes over like this, and the Traveller Cowl is really clever. It's an Andrea Mowry pattern, and it just sits, so it's this interesting shape that you then seam at the back, and it just sits beautifully. As you can see, you just literally pop it on your head, and then you've got your cowl sitting there almost sort of dressed sort of straight away, if you like. It's really warm to wear, and it's just been such a lovely thing. I've worn it almost daily, I think. It's something that, you know, I really enjoy wearing, feels really nice to wear, and obviously it gives me that little bit of warmth around the neck at this time of year. This one, and as I say, you may remember me talking about it before, but I'll just quickly run through the yarns on this one. The sort of multicoloured, it was oranges and reds and things and yellows and limes, is it was called Pimms O'Clock, and it was a hand-dyed yarn from Camel Yarns, who do make some fabulous different colour yarns, and I bought that from Stitches and Cream last year. And then along with that, I've raided my stash, and I'm just trying to remember what I've got here. I have got Kidsilk, Rowan Kidsilk Haze with I think with some Rowan lace in with it, and then the dark green is Rowan Felted Tweed. So I just varied the stripes, and in fact what I found was, are you going down, puppet? Yeah. And I started, and you actually see quite a lot of the Traveller Cowls running out of the changing colour towards the end, and this one did that. You can just see, I hope it's not too obvious, but you can just see that as I started to run out of the yarn here, so there you can see lots of the Pimms O'Clock going on, and I started to have less and less of it. So what I did was just use it sparingly, and brought in more of the Kidsilk Haze and the Rowan Felted Tweed. But I don't think really when you're wearing it, it's particularly noticeable, you know. So I think that works anyway. The pattern is a really interesting shape, and Andrea Mowry's patterns, I think I've said this before, are very detailed, which is obviously the better way to be, but I'm used to, particularly with the Rowan patterns, they're being quite concise, and so I'm always almost looking for the information within the pattern, for the information that I'm looking for. And I think what I might actually do is write this out a bit more concisely for the information that I need, because once you get going with the pattern, you just need to know that you need to knit to this far, to this measurement, or to that matches that, and so forth. That will probably make it easier for me to stick on. The first time, I think it was this one, I did, because I also did a shift along cowl as well, and I got the shape wrong because there's all these different sections, and I moved on to the wrong section and decreased. Instead of decreasing at the top, I decreased at the bottom, and it ended up the wrong shape, and I had to undo it a little bit and then sort of sew it up with the shape not being quite perfect. But actually it still worked. You would never know. There is something about the slouchiness of the way that you're wearing that means that you wouldn't really notice. It wouldn't be obvious. So that's great, because it's forgiving too. I think this pattern is fabulous for using bits of leftover yarn. And it's funny, I was thinking this, even though I've got loads of stuff in my stash, and certainly a lot where I could be making a full jumper, I still keep gravitating towards those bits that I've got left and thinking, oh, what could I make with that? So on that subject, let me tell you about two more travellers that I have cast on. So I have got this one. So these yarns are left over from the Tessellated Cardigan that I think I showed to you sometime last year, maybe in November. And this is where we are with it so far. We're getting there. As you can see, we haven't got that far to go. I think that's See, this is what I mean. I have trouble in kind of working out the shape, and I have to keep going back and referring to the... Andrea Mara's got a picture of the shape, which is really helpful. And, you know, she writes, this is the neck, and this is that bit, and this is that bit. So I think that's the neck anyway, so it goes around like that. It's going to hang like that. So I love these colours. I love the colours on the Tessellated Cardigan. So to be able to use it again, and I have actually quite a lot of yarn left, partly because when you're buying hand-dyed yarn, you obviously want to make sure you've got plenty, and I bought that yarn from a yarn show, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get more, so I did buy plenty, so I had plenty left over. So it's really nice to have something to... In fact, I think I'm still going to have enough yarn to maybe do a hat or something as well with it. So it's all getting used up, which is great. So yeah, this is beautiful. So it is made of... You've got the solid colour there, and then you've got the colour changing yarn there, and these are both from Debonaire, which is a hand dye based up in Rutland County, and then the yellow mohair is from Fibre Fox, and it's a beautiful colour. I love the way that pops through on there, so that's going to be lovely. Now these are sock yarns, and the mohair is held doubles, so give it a similar thickness, which is just how I used it on the Tessellated Cardigan. So this is much slower to knit than the yellow one. This one was a double knit, so this is much slower to knit. You can see that you're obviously getting a lot more ridges in there, a lot more stitches. So, but it's coming along, and we're on the final bit, and I'm starting to reduce down. So that's good. And this is one of those ones. This is quite often in my bag if we travel up to London or on a train somewhere or something like that. This will be one that I'll pick up and use, take along for those kind of trips, and that's why it's been going. So I was knitting this when I did my trip up to Scotland in October, and because I can remember, I always like that, the way you've got those memories sort of engaged in where you were when you were knitting them, especially the smaller items, because they're the ones you tend to take around with you. And I was knitting it on the minibus as we were travelling around Scotland doing our Wall and Walks tour. And as I say, it's still going, but largely because it's one that I take with me when we're going places, whereas at home I tend to get out and be knitting the full garments. I've also cast on another one. This one's a thicker yarn, and so it's easier to knit in the car, which is my excuse for casting on another one before I finish that one. This is with the leftover yarn from my Plateau Cardigan, and it is Rowan's Pebble Island yarn. I love this yarn, and I love the way Eric and I put the colours together in the Plateau Cardigan, and I've taken that idea and the garter ridges, so you can see that that's different. I shouldn't have put it down, should I? You can see that sits differently to, there are more regular garter stitch ridges. Let me just hold that a bit closer. So you've got more regular garter stitch ridges on this one. On this one it is following how the pattern went on the Plateau, because I felt that worked really well, and so I wanted to replicate that on there. So this is, again, because this is more of a worsted weight, really, it's a heavy double knit, it's described as, but I would call it more of a worsted weight. You would knit it generally on a 4.5mm needle, so this is knitting up quicker, and I've been knitting this in the car a few times. And again, let me see if I can work out, that's definitely not the neck because that looks messy. So the neck has an I-cord to it, and is that the neck? Nope. No, there we are. There it is. Yeah. So it's going to come around like that. But when you seam it, it then pulls it all round, which kind of makes it sort of gather up. So rather than just sort of hanging like a bib, it then all comes up like that, which is really lovely. And so I'm managing to get through a lot of my yarns, and I'm just hoping that I've got enough different yarns to manage. Again, on this one, like the one that I was knitting in the sock yarn, I'm on that last stage, and I'm trying to eke out and make sure that I've got enough yarn to keep the colour changes, because the yellow and the burgundy I've got loads of, and a fair bit of this green, but the others I'm getting quite low on, so I'm just trying to make sure that I'm getting enough variation of the colour stripes going through there. So that's really lovely. And I think the Rowan Pebble Island is it's a Falkland Island merino, and it's so soft, and it will be really nice to wear around my neck, so that would be lovely. And that was a great way to use up, because the striped cardigan, the Plateau, the problem with striped cardigans is they can be a bit wasteful, if you like, on the amount of yarn. You can end up with a lot of yarn because you've got all the different colours, so something like that is a great way to use them up. And I've got a plan to do another one as well, and in fact I've bought the yarn. When we took my daughter back to, I'm sorry, I was just trying to remember when it was. Took my daughter back to Cornwall to go to university, and I went to Stitches and Cream, which I haven't been to. It's been quite a while actually. So that was really lovely. It was lovely to go there, and I had a whole list of things that I wanted to get. I was really making the most of it, and in fact there was a little bit of a couple of things. I literally just bought one ball and thought, right, okay, let's take that home, let's do a test of square and see if I like it, and if I know I like it and I know it works, then I can order more of that yarn online directly from them, which I've already done for one of the things. Anyway, I bought some yarn to go with the remains of last year's Advent, which was Daft Day's cardigan I knitted in it, and the Advent was from Blue Fern Yarns, and it was this lovely, it had this sort of sea theme, and it went through all these blues and sort of beiges and those kind of things. Interestingly enough, quite different from the Camel yarn one, which also had a sort of sea type theme. Anyway, so I love the colours of that Advent so much, and there were just these little balls left, and my idea, but of course I've got 24 of these little balls, so I've got this very pale colour that I'm going to mix in with it and make another traveller cowl for my daughter. So that's the plan. Whether it'll actually get finished in time for her to want to wear it this year, I don't know, but anyway, the cowl that she wears a lot at the moment is one of my cowls that she's stolen, so she's or adopted, if you like. So it'd be nice for her to have her own, and in a colourway that is much more the kind of colours she would normally wear, you know, whereas I tend to gravitate towards brighter, stronger colours. She more suits, because she's a real English rose, she more suits those paler colours. So my next work in progress is the Judith cardigan, and I've made a bit more progress. So some stitches that slipped off there. A bit more progress than when I last spoke to you. So there we go. It's looking really nice. It's interesting. It's not quite the colours. It's a bit lighter than I thought it was going to be. I'm not quite sure why that is. And some of the colours are not quite. Some of them I love the combinations, and others I'm not so sure of. But I know I remember thinking that about the Plateau cardigan. I'm just going to try and go with it for the moment. However, I have just reached a stage where there are two greens, and I've gone back and I've double checked it. I've double checked the pattern, but these two greens are awfully similar, and I don't really want to put them next to each other because I think they're going to blend in. So I was reluctant to do it, but I have actually taken a step off and chosen a slightly different green, and in the hope that then I can use the green that should have been there in a different place, and that will balance up. Anyway, fingers crossed. If that doesn't work, I have got some other quite similar yarn that I could substitute in as well. So we will see where we go. I love doing the ferrule. It's a simple ferrule. It's a lovely simple pattern. You only need to sort of look once at the beginning. It's in the round, it's knitted in the round, and it's going to be steeked because it's a cardigan. I'm just trying to find my steek end. Yeah, you can't really, it's not actually that obvious, but yeah, this will be my steeked part where I will secure it and then cut it up here. So I mean, it's a simple Fair Isle cardigan, so Fair Isle pattern. So I have a look at the pattern at the beginning of a round. As I say, you can see there's a lot of stitches on a round, and then off I go. And I'm knitting with 2 hands like I normally do, and I can go off in quite a rhythm, and it goes quite fast. I mean, this row that I'm knitting at the moment is literally one colour, one stitch, another colour, the other stitch, and then swap, and it's literally just that. But I am finding that when I sit down, particularly of an evening, but when I sit down, it's not what I gravitate towards. And this is something I need to be mindful of. I love doing Fair Isle, and I love the creativity of it, seeing the colours come together and so forth. But I don't tend to gravitate towards it. If it's on a yoke like this, I do. Somehow I like the idea of knitting it and getting it done. But when it's on a full Fair Isle thing like this, it feels a little bit harder, and I need to think about that when I'm choosing patterns. And in fact, I'll talk about something else that I chose differently because of that, being aware of that. So I have changed those greens, and we'll have to see how that works out. I had already knitted almost a full row with these 2 greens that were too similar. I thought, no, I need to, there's just, the rounds are so big. I thought, I've got to stop, I've got to take it back. And it took me quite a long time to take it back. So I just hope that I've now made the right decision and that's going to work out. I know that if it's not right, I've got to take it back. But yeah, I'm hoping that no more taking back will be required of that. So the first of my new cast-ons is using this palette that I bought from the Glasgow School of Yarn. I bought a lot there, just to, you probably gathered that by now, but yeah. And I saw this there, and it was just like, ooh, sweetie shop. Look at those, they're lovely. They do look a bit messy now because this is after I've used them, so I shall show you what I've made. So this is called the North Coast Tweed Yarn Palettes, and it's from the Border Mill. They also had a lovely puppy knitted in different colours using that, which was a lovely thing. And I'm about to pick up and show you the wrong thing. Hang on a moment, sorry. Don't want to see the Jackie, we've already seen that. So I did a tension square. Decided I was going to do sea glass sweater. So I did a tension square, and I just didn't like the way the pattern was coming up. So instead of getting that nice rainbow and fading of colours, it all seemed to get a bit mixed up. So I changed the way that I'm doing the stitches. So with the sea glass, there's a lot of alternating. So instead of doing that, I will start with one colour, or let's say 2 colours, colour 1 and colour 2, and do colour 1 and colour 2 for one row, and then round, and then the next round it's only colour 2, and then the next round it's colour 2 and colour 3, and that, as I say, that's just alternating in stocking stitch. And then after doing colour 2 and colour 3, the next round would be all colour 3, and so forth, and it works along like that. And that's what I've done. So I cast on long tail cast on, which I don't normally do for a sweater, but this was because I wanted to knit in stocking stitch to create the neck as they have it in the Fern and Feather, where it's stocking stitch and then it rolls, as stocking stitch does, round a little bit, and makes a much more, I don't know, sort of gentle neck. And I like the look of that, so I decided that I was going to do that on this one. And I'm using, for my main colour, my main contrast colour, if you like, I'm using Rowan Valley Tweed, which is this one, another yarn in my stash. I've got a lot of Rowan yarn in my stash because I worked at a Rowan store, and when it closed down, there was the opportunity to get a lot of yarn, and it was very hard to not do that, so I've got lots of that, and I'm still working through it. So this is what I've come up with so far. So that's I'm just trying to get to the front. So there's some short row shaping, so the back is a bit longer, but that's how it's looking. and I've finished the colour fading part. Let's see if we can just bring it up a bit more. So I'm really pleased with that. That was the kind of effect that I was looking for, to really sort of show those yarns off beautifully. So that's going to sit on the yoke. So I'm now at a stage where I am just doing the last of the shaping on the yoke, and then I'll be ready to split for sleeves. Now, when I did the tension square for this, so the sizing, the shaping is all from the sea glass sweater. It's just that I have slightly varied how I did the colour changing on it, and of course now this grey is going to be the solid colour for the remainder of the sweater. But as I say, we're following the sea glass sweater pattern, and when I did the tension square for it, I was off gauge. I think the sea glass sweater, is it? I think it's for a double knit actually. This is both the colours in the colour palette and the Rowan Valley Tweed are both 4-ply, and so I've got too many stitches per centimetre. So all I did was then I decided to do the maths and actually change the size that I was making in order to make it work out. So I calculated how many stitches I had per centimetre. I multiplied the stitches per centimetre by my required chest size in centimetres to get my stitch count. I then looked at the stitch count on the chest after splitting for sleeves and chose the size that was closest to this stitch count. To then add it to it more complicated, those of you that follow me regularly be thinking, oh, but I never cast on at the top for the same size as I am when I'm under the sleeves. So I've taken that size. I've written this all down. I had to, so otherwise I will go wrong on the pattern. So I've taken that size. I've gone down 2 sizes for the cast on and for the yoke, and then I would go up to 2 sizes and be at that size that I worked out I should be for the bust when I split for the sleeves. So that's all the plan. So I am doing quite a few things here that are a little bit off-piste, if you like. So there is a certain amount of jeopardy in it, but it'd be really interesting to see how it works out. I've done the maths before, and I have knitted something I think it should have been in Aran weight, and I knitted it in double knit, and that worked out okay. But I think there is always an element of risk when you come away from the pattern, and it's just something you've got to be mindful about. And I definitely, for me, have to write down everything that I'm doing when I'm changing stuff. Also, of course, it's useful to then be able to share that with you. And if I can get myself a bit more organised, get back on Ravelry and get that kind of information, I always like to put that on Ravelry. And certainly I find that where I have made a lot of changes, other people are often really interested in seeing what you've done and how you've done it. So it's always good to share that if it works out. So that's that pattern. So that's quite exciting because it is a bit different and you can't see. I mean, obviously I have a picture in my head of how it's going to look, but you know, you can't see exactly how it's going to look, so it's quite interesting. So my next cast on is using the yarns from one of my advents, from the Camel Yarns advent, and these came in some lovely colours, and I'll put a photo up there of the colours. And then I decided that I'm going to add in a few more. I think I talked quite a lot about mini skeins, and having bought quite a few mini skeins, I've added some of the mini skeins into that just to add a bit more to it. So the pattern that I'm knitting is the Little Squares blanket, and I did and ah between the Sweet Shop blanket and the Little Squares blanket, but I ended up going for this. There's a real simplicity to it that's rather beautiful, and I find myself really gravitating to wanting to just keep picking it up and knitting it. It's a great one to be able to knit when you're in the car. I guess you could take it around if you were travelling a little bit, in the sense you've got to carry the little mini balls, but you're not carrying a huge garment because you're knitting it in strips. So let me show you. The main colour, or the contrast colour if you like, to complement the advent, is from West Yorkshire Spinners, and it's a pure Falkland Island double knit wool, and that's that there, and got that from Stitches and Cream. So that was another of the purchases that I made when I was there the other weekend. And let me get you out my knitting, and it's currently in, but I think it's going to outgrow this quite soon, this rather nice little bag which I've just picked up from a charity shop, but it's very good for a small project and it's rather nice. So here we go. This is what I've done so far. No, but we're going to hold it this way because otherwise it takes up the whole screen. So yeah, so you've got day 1, day 2 and so forth, and then you've got a number of rows in between, and you do this. Now on the pattern, I think she said she did it for 10 squares. I'm thinking, current thinking at the moment is maybe 12 squares. I don't know, because I probably need to do a little bit of maths and work out, especially given that I've added in another 5 colours. I need to work out how many squares I'm likely to end up with, and therefore what kind of sizing I want it to be. I want it to be bigger than but it's not a baby blanket. It would make a lovely baby blanket if it wasn't for the fact that I'm not sure how washable the yarns will be, and I certainly wouldn't want to give it to somebody as a baby blanket for that reason. If I'm making something for a baby, I've got to know that it's a proper machine washable yarn, whereas obviously super washes and things, and actually I don't know if I can't remember if this one's superwash or not. So we're not going down that line. It's going to be a nice blanket for us to have in the house rather than to give us a baby blanket or anything. So you knit these strips, and as I say, 10, 12, 15 squares, I don't know, we will decide. You can see they're all in garter strip, and then when you've got the strip to a certain length, you then pick up along here with a run of the contrast colour, and then you put that down and you pick up the next strip and you do that. So each strip will be a number of squares with the contrast strip going along the top, and then you'll sew them up together. Luckily for me, I like a bit of mattress stitch, so that's not too much of a challenge, and I may well do it as I go along. That would be the thing to do. I can see I've got a little bit here that is not perfect. I'm not quite sure what I did. I think I knitted the wrong amount of garter stitch rows for the contrast colour, and I was knitting in the car, and it was dark by that point, so it's always a bit dangerous. I do have one of those neck lights which I can switch on to check if I think I've gone wrong, but most of it by that point I'm knitting without looking, which is always a little bit dangerous. Anyway, it's not really that noticeable, and I can tidy it up a little bit with a bit of duplicate stitching. And what I'm doing, so you can't see it there, but you can here, I've been changing colour using a Russian join. So what you do with the Russian join is you're literally looping one yarn round the other, and then threading the tail back into the same yarn. I'll put a photograph up here to sort of show you what that looks like. Or indeed, if it's a fairly toothy yarn, I mean these are fairly smooth, but they still seem to be quite happy to do that, you can actually get away with just wrapping it, your tail yarn, back round its own yarn rather than actually threading it through. And the join of the Russian yarn join, the join of it, you get to fall right as you're changing colour, and the way you do that is I stop 4 stitches before the end of the row. I wrap the yarn round the needle 4 times, and then perhaps add a tiny little squidge on top. It seems to need that, and then I make that change in yarn where I loop the 2 yarns through each other, and then knit those 4 stitches in the old colour. By the time I get to the end, it's changed. You're at that change point of the Russian join, and then it starts the new colour. So that will mean I haven't got loads of ends to sew in. I have got these little bits, but I know that these are already sewn in as I've gone along, and so I can cut them nice and short, and they won't be noticeable. So yeah, I just knew that I had to find a way of doing it that I felt was going to work. Of course, I could just start the new colour and sew it in as you go along, but that would then mean you want to be hiding your yarn within the same yarn itself, but you don't want to be doing two at the same time. It would mean the other one would have to then be taken up a bit and done in a colour higher up, which you could do, but actually I'm quite pleased with the way that I'm doing that. I think that's working really well, and I think it's very effective on, you know, when you get some patterns where you've got a lot of stripes going on, that's a good way to get around having to sew in all the yarns. So not much there so far, but it's coming along and I'm already loving what it's doing, and I think it really shows these beautiful colours, the hand-dyed yarns off really well, and that's what I think I'm really pleased about, that and the fact it's dead simple to knit and I don't need to think about it. I may get bored of it, of course, and there's always that risk, but hopefully not. So my last new cast on is using the Blue Fern Yarns advent calendar. So I had two advent calendars, one from Camel Yarns and one from Blue Fern Yarns. So I did myself a little swatch, and I bought the pattern altogether Cowl, I think it's called, and I bought that and I started doing the swatch, and that's up at the top here. And what I found was I was having to go back and look at the pattern every row before I started every row, a bit like the Judith Fair Isle. There wasn't a lot more to it than that. I just took it, for as long as I looked at it at the beginning, then I knew what I had to do, but I had to nevertheless keep going back at the beginning of each one and changing. And of course this is only, I think it's 100 or so stitches, so it felt like I was looking a lot more regularly. So I wasn't sure about how that looked. So then around the same time I decided to vary the sea glass sweater that I was knitting, the one with the changing colours on the yoke. And I thought, well, actually, if I'm not going to do the proper sea glass pattern on that one, then let's get the sea glass cowl and do it on this one. And so that is what I've done, and that's the lower part here. Now I did a few so some of them I had a row in between, and others I just kept it going, so I did a few variations to try and see what I like best. And what I ended up going for, all these things that the knitting is attached to, is this. That is how it's looking. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking a mini skein and I'm knitting a stitch of that colour and a stitch of the contrast, a stitch of the colour, stitch of the contrast, and then on the next round I'm alternating it round the other way, so that above the stitch of the contrast you've got a stitch of the colour, and above the stitch of the colour you've got a stitch of the contrast. And then after those two rounds I then go on to a new colour, so day 2 in this situation, then day 3. And so that's what we've got going on there, and that's where we've got that sort of changing colour. So the colours were it's quite a sort of moody, sort of dark sort of pattern, so I've chosen to go with it and to set those colours off really nicely, because a cream or something just wouldn't have worked with this one. So I've got some Rowan Pebble, which I had 2 and a bit skeins, and they're 100 gram skeins in my stash, and actually I'm not sure how easily that is a colour it would have got used in something else, so I think it's working really well in this one, and it is really interesting seeing the colour develop, because at first I was kind of like, okay, it's not very interesting, but actually the more colour that comes into it and the more it develops, the more interesting I think it is. It's provisionally cast on, so this is an infinity cowl, and it's provisionally cast on there's loads of videos with the sea glass patterns. You buy the pattern and you get loads of videos, and they talk about how to choose the different colours, because the idea is that the sea glass patterns can be used with as stash busting, and so you can mix up lots of colours. Obviously it's a bit different for me because I've got an advent, and so I've got kind of a run of colours, and so I'm following that run. In other words, the same as the order of the days that they came in. But if you haven't got that and you're just putting together some of your other colours, then there are videos to show you how to do that. There's also videos on showing you how to cast on. So it's a provisional cast on because it's an infinity cowl, so you're going to need to join it at the end, and it will be like a Kitchener stitch join at the end, so that it looks invisible. So I would normally do my provisional cast on onto a bit of yarn, and it's usually the crochet one that I use. However, I bought a set of interchangeables at Christmas, and I've had interchangeables before, and I found that the yarn would always get stuck at the join, or the join would undo, and I just lost patience with them. So for years I've knitted with fixed circulars, which are fine, but I did quite fancy trying again interchangeables. So it's nice to get those, and they are beautiful. They're a beautiful wood. I might grab those in a minute actually and show you what they look like. I think I would like some shorter, and that's why these are not on, because these have got a shorter needle, and when you're knitting in quite a small circumference you need, or I certainly think you do, need a shorter needle. So that's something I'd like to add to the set. Anyway, it comes with, of course, you have your needle tips and you have your cables, and so I've cast onto one of those cables, and then what will happen is you will then, this is a stopper, and you then change the stopper over for one of the needle tips, and then you can knit away on it when you're at that point where you're ready to do that. So I'm giving that a try, but I have to say, and maybe if I'd have had some shorter cords it would have helped, but I am finding that this cord is getting on my nerves because it's getting in the way. But I think once I've got a bit of knitting between me and the cord, then I think it will probably be fine. So, and you can see I've got this lovely stitch marker which actually came with the Camel Yarns one, but it was just what I had sitting there, and I thought, oh, I'd like to use that. Little things like that always give a little bit of pleasure, don't they? You know, it's so nice to have beautiful things to use. So I thought I'd find for you, before I go, these are the interchangeable needles that I got. They're I don't know, is that Leica or Leica? I'm not quite sure the right way to pronounce that, but yeah, they're lovely driftwood needles they are, and they do feel beautiful. They only go down to a certain size, but I know from experience that the thin wooden needles do snap ever so easily, and in those situations I'd rather use a metal needle than risk them snapping and splitting. And then I've got a pocket here for the cords and the stoppers. So that's a really beautiful present, and it's a lovely case. So yeah, just sort of giving those out a try at the moment. They certainly feel very nice to knit on, and it'd be interesting to see whether that's something that I gravitate towards in time. Another interesting thing that I was given as I got some lovely presents. I'm just showing you a couple. Was this measurer, and it measures the thickness of the yarn. Both, you've got the gauge here and also by the wraps that go around this bit at the bottom, and I've actually already found that useful because I had a beautiful skein of hand-dyed yarn, and I was knitting it into a hat that I'll talk to you about at some point, and it clearly wasn't, it seemed to suggest it it was 4-ply, but it wasn't, but it wasn't quite double knit. So it probably was sport weight really, and so by doing that measuring, I was able to confirm that, because I was kind of looking at it and thinking, oh, you're a bit thick for a 4-ply, even though that's what the band seemed to suggest that it was. So that was really useful for that. So anyway, so Hugo has gone and taken him off and he's having a lovely sleep on our doormat, which is his favourite place to sleep, because I think he then knows he can keep an eye on what all his humans are getting up to, and make sure we're not doing anything that doesn't involve him. And I'm going to take him out for a nice walk after lunch today. Coming up at the end of the video, talking of walks, we went out last weekend, and we went to Suffolk, down to the coast, and we took Hugo out on a lovely long walk, and it was, being January, it was cold. The temperature was not that high. It was maybe 5 or 6 degrees, and the sun didn't greet us at all, but it was dry and there wasn't a strong wind or anything like that, so it was just nice to get out and have a walk. It was fairly busy in places. It's interesting actually, when you're out walking, you meet a few people, particularly dog walkers, but then when you go into the pubs, then it's really busy. So it's notable that that's where sort of people gravitate, and Suffolk's got wonderful pubs. So we had a lovely day there. And so coming up, you'll see some footage of Hugo enjoying his walk in Suffolk. I've got, let me see, what have I got coming up? We're going to be going back down to Cornwall, not this weekend, but the following weekend. We've just stepped back a little bit because my daughter's finishing her dissertation and we didn't want to distract her from doing that, so we've left a longer gap than we normally would do to go down and see her, and then by then I guess we're going to be moving into February, and it's be nice to see the end of January. I always find January a difficult month. I think a lot of us do, and it was interesting actually, because I saw an Instagram post at the beginning of January this year, and she was saying how during the summer months how busy they are, and how they use this time of year, the colder months, as a time to sort of hanker down and recharge. And I've been trying to look at it like that. I tend to not be as well over the winter months, and so that's more challenging as well. And so, I'm trying to view it all in a different way, and instead of trying to keep pushing, keep going, just trying to find things. And more than anything, I think when the sun does pop out, and I'm hoping it's going to, there's just little hints of it out there at the moment, when it does pop out, is to get out and have a walk in that winter sunshine, because it is a real tonic. And then before we know it, the buds will be popping up from spring, and that's the bit that I always really love, and you can see the signs of a whole new year starting again and coming back to life outside, and of course I think we're all noticing that it's getting a little bit lighter, a little bit earlier in the morning, and a little bit the days are a little bit longer in the evening, unless of course you're down the opposite end of the world when that isn't what you're noticing. But it's really nice to be heading towards that and see that's starting to lift. So it's been lovely to stop and have a chat with you. I'm going to head off now and do some more knitting, and I really must try and get some stuff on Ravelry, so that you can look at that if you want to look at things in more detail. And I'll be back in a few more weeks. I say that loosely. It really depends on my energy levels and what else is going on. But I hope to see you again in a few more weeks with updates of all the things that I've been up to, any new cast-ons I've done, and I know I will have at least one finished item to show you then as well. So until then, thank you so much for watching. It's been so lovely to have you again. Take care, and we shall see you soon. All right, bye-bye.